Nashville, Tennessee, 2023. A woman stands alone at a county auction, her heart racing as she raises her hand to bid on a dilapidated farmhouse no one else seems to want. Rebecca Mitchell's weathered pickup truck contains everything she owns, the culmination of a decade of saving while raising her daughter on a teacher's salary. As the gavel falls, sealing her ownership of the abandoned Caldwell property, she has no idea that beneath its overgrown fields lies an artifact that will challenge the foundations of American history. The auctioneer's voice cut through the humid summer air. "Sold to the lady in the denim jacket for $18,000. Rebecca lowered her trembling hand, hardly believing what she'd just done. At 38, with auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and determination etched in the fine lines around her eyes, she had just spent her life savings on 70 acres of neglected farmland and a house that most considered beyond. "Saving? Got yourself a real fixer-upper there," commented an older man in overalls as the small crowd began to disperse. "Caldwell Place hasn't been worked properly in 20 years. Bank's been trying to unload it for the past 3. Rebecca nodded politely but said nothing. She'd heard all the warnings before the auction. The soil was depleted. The farmhouse had structural issues. The property was too far from town to be practical. But what others saw as disadvantages, she viewed as opportunity. The remote location meant affordability. The depleted soil could be regenerated with proper care. And the spacious land would give her 15-year-old daughter, Lily, room to breathe. After years in their cramped apartment, she walked toward the rickety farmhouse that was now hers, each step sending puffs of dust from the dry ground. The August heat pressed down as she climbed the sagging porch steps, the wood creaking beneath her weight. The key the auctioneer had handed her was old-fashioned and heavy in her palm. Before we continue with Rebecca's story, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. And if you're enjoying this incredible journey, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow's story will reveal something even more extraordinary. The ancient lock resisted at first, then yielded with a reluctant groan. The door swung inward, revealing a living room frozen in time. Dust motes danced in the sunlight that filtered through grimy windows. Faded wallpaper peeled at the seams, and the hardwood floors were dulled by years of neglect. But beneath the disrepair, Rebecca could see the bones of something beautiful: high ceilings, intricate woodwork, a stone fireplace that dominated one wall. "I can make this work," she whispered to herself, the words both a promise and a prayer. Rebecca had never planned to become a farmer. With a master's degree in history and 15 years teaching at Pinewood High School, her life had followed a predictable, if challenging, path. But the economic downturn had hit small towns like Millbrook especially hard. Budget cuts had eliminated her position last spring, and job prospects were scarce. When the Caldwell farm came up for auction at a fraction of its value, something had called to her, a chance to rewrite her own story. Outside, the property stretched toward distant tree lines. The once productive fields lay fallow, reclaimed by weeds and scrubby bushes. An old barn listed to one side, its red paint faded to a dull rust. Equipment sheds stood with doors hanging from broken hinges. It was overwhelming when viewed as a whole. But Rebecca had learned to break impossible tasks into manageable pieces. She returned to her truck and pulled out a notebook, beginning to sketch a rough property map and prioritize immediate needs. Clean water, functional electricity, a safe roof over their heads. The rest could come later. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the abandoned farm, Rebecca felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. She had just committed every penny she had to this wild gamble. There would be no safety net, no fallback position if she failed. Her phone chimed with a text from Lily. How'd it go? Are we homeless or farmers? Rebecca smiled despite her exhaustion. Farmers, she typed back. I'll pick you up tomorrow. Wait till you see it. She didn't mention the knot of anxiety in her stomach or the magnitude of work ahead. Lily had weathered enough challenges since her father had walked out 10 years ago. This new beginning needed to be framed as an adventure, not another hardship to endure. That night, Rebecca slept in her truck parked on her new property, unwilling to make the hour. Drive back to their apartment, only to return the next day. As darkness enveloped the farm, the sounds of the countryside surrounded her. Crickets chirping, an owl hooting from a distant tree, the rustle of night creatures moving through tall grass. The stars blazed overhead, undiminished by city lights, and Rebecca fell asleep, counting them through the truck window. Morning arrived with the first rooster crow from a neighboring farm. Rebecca awoke stiff but determined, washing her face with bottled water before beginning a more thorough exploration of the property. The farmhouse needed substantial work. The wiring was outdated, plumbing questionable, and several windows were broken. But the foundation seemed solid, and the roof, though missing some shingles, didn't show signs of major leaks. The barn proved more problematic. As she carefully picked her way through the structure, testing floorboards before putting her full weight on them, Rebecca noticed a section in the back that seemed different from the rest. The wood was older, the construction techniques more primitive than the main structure. Must have been the original barn, she murmured, running her hand. Along rough-hewn beams darkened by age. They built around it instead of tearing it down. In the far corner, something caught her eye. A trapdoor set into the floor, its iron ring handle nearly invisible under decades of dust and cobwebs. Curiosity piqued. Rebecca knelt and pulled. The door refused to budge at first, then suddenly gave way, releasing a cloud of musty air that made her cough. A narrow ladder descended into darkness. Rebecca hesitated, then fished her phone from her pocket and activated the flashlight. The beam revealed what appeared to be a root cellar, a small space with earthen walls reinforced by timber. Shelves lined one side, still holding ancient canning jars with contents long since turned to unidentifiable mush. "Hello, winter storage," Rebecca said to herself, mentally adding clean root cellar to her ever-growing list of tasks. As she turned to leave, her light glinted off something metallic in the far corner. Ducking her head to avoid the low ceiling, Rebecca made her way toward it. Partially buried in the packed earth floor was an old metal box, approximately the size of a large book. She crouched down and brushed away decades of dirt, revealing an ornate lock mechanism that had long since corroded. After several attempts to open it, Rebecca carried the box back to her truck, where her toolkit contained a small pry bar. With careful pressure, the lock finally surrendered with a snap. She lifted the lid, holding her breath without entirely knowing why. Inside lay a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age, and beneath it, wrapped in what appeared to be an oilcloth, a small bundle. Rebecca gently lifted the journal, opening it to the first page. The handwriting was elegant but faded, the ink brown rather than black with age. At the top of the page, a date, April 17th, 1776. Rebecca's historian training immediately kicked in. The Revolutionary War was just beginning. The Declaration of Independence wouldn't be signed for months. If authentic, this journal was from the very crucible of American nationhood. The name beneath the date made her breath catch. Eleanor Caldwell. The original Caldwell, Rebecca whispered, connecting the dots. This farm had been in the same family for generations until recent times. Carefully setting the precious journal aside, Rebecca unwrapped the oilcloth bundle. Inside was a medallion of some kind, crafted from tarnished silver. One side bore an engraving of a tree with spreading branches. The other featured strange symbols arranged in a circle. Not English letters, not any alphabet Rebecca recognized. From her historical studies. "What in the world is this?" she murmured, turning the medallion over in her palm. It felt strangely warm to the touch, as though it had been lying in sunshine rather than buried in a dark cellar for centuries. Rebecca's phone chimed, breaking the spell. The high school where Lily was staying with a friend after summer band practice was expecting her pickup soon. Reluctantly, Rebecca rewrapped the medallion and placed it and the journal back in the box. This mystery would have to wait. The drive to Pinewood High brought Rebecca back to the realities of her situation. She had just spent her savings on a property that would require thousands more to make properly habitable. School would start in 3 weeks, and Lily needed supplies, clothes, and stability. Rebecca had applications out for teaching positions in neighboring counties, but nothing had materialized yet. As she pulled into the school parking lot, she spotted Lily immediately. Tall and lanky like her father, with Rebecca's auburn hair cut in a short, practical style. At 15, she balanced on the edge between childhood and adulthood, her face still round with youth, but her eyes wise beyond their years. "So we're really farmers now?" Lily asked, as she tossed her backpack into the truck. "Please tell me there's indoor plumbing." Rebecca laughed. "There is, though I can't guarantee how well it works yet. And we're not farmers exactly, more like land rehabilitators." "Is that even a thing?" "It is now," Rebecca replied with more confidence than she felt. "I've been researching sustainable farming methods, permaculture, soil regeneration. There are grants available for women re-entering agriculture." Lily studied her mother's face. "You're really serious about this?" "I am," Rebecca confirmed. "The school system isn't rehiring any time soon. This property gives us a place to live without rent, land that can eventually produce income, and a fresh start." She paused. "I also found something interesting today. A journal from 1776 and some kind of medallion hidden in an old root cellar." Lily's eyes widened. "Like actual Revolutionary War era? That's your specialty?" Rebecca nodded, momentarily cheered by her daughters. "Enthusiasm. We'll take a closer look once we're settled." The drive to their new home filled with Lily's questions and Rebecca's tentative answers. Yes, they'd need to live simply for a while. No, there wasn't internet service yet, but the library in town had free Wi-Fi. Yes, the school bus would pick her up, though the stop was at the end of their long driveway. As they crested the final hill and the farmhouse came into view, Rebecca watched Lily's expression carefully. The reality was far from the picturesque rural idyll that might have populated her daughter's imagination. "It's going to need some work," Rebecca acknowledged as she parked beside the house. "But it has good bones." Lily climbed out of the truck, turning slowly to take in their new domain. "It's so quiet," she finally said, "and big. We've got actual land." 70 acres, Rebecca confirmed. Most of it overgrown, but it's ours. They spent the rest of the day unloading their meager belongings from the truck and cleaning the 2 bedrooms and kitchen enough to make them temporarily habitable. Rebecca had arranged for a power company crew to reconnect electricity the following day, but for tonight they would make do with battery-powered lanterns. As dusk approached, they sat on the porch steps eating sandwiches brought from town, watching fireflies begin their nightly dance across the fields. "What made you do it, Mom?" Lily asked suddenly. "Buy this place, I mean. It doesn't seem like you." Rebecca considered the question. "Maybe it isn't the me I've been," she said slowly, "but perhaps it's the me I could become." She gestured toward the expansive property. "When I saw this place at the auction, everyone else was seeing problems. The run-down buildings, the neglected fields, the isolation. But I saw possibility. Room to breathe, space to grow something new." "You sound like one of those inspirational posters in the guidance counselor's office," Lily teased, but her smile was gentle. Rebecca laughed. "I probably do, but there's truth in it. Sometimes the biggest opportunities come disguised as problems no one else wants to tackle." As darkness settled fully around them, Rebecca thought of the mysterious box still in her truck. Tomorrow, after dealing with the electrical crew, she would examine its contents more carefully. For now, she needed to focus on creating some semblance of normalcy for Lily. They settled for the night in sleeping bags on the newly swept floor, the open windows allowing in a cool breeze that carried the scent of grass and distant rain. Despite the hard floor and the uncertainty of their future, Rebecca felt something she hadn't experienced in years. A sense of ownership, of possibility, of writing her own story, rather than merely reacting to circumstances. Just before sleep claimed her, Rebecca remembered something her grandmother used to say: "The most important history isn't always in textbooks. Sometimes it's buried in our own backyards, waiting to be discovered." The memory brought a smile to her lips as she drifted off, unaware of just how prophetic those words would prove to be. The electrical crew arrived mid-morning, their truck navigating the rutted driveway with practiced ease. The foreman, a stocky man named Ray Whitaker, greeted Rebecca with the casual familiarity of small-town life. "Heard you bought the old Caldwell place," he said, reviewing the work order. "My granddad used to mention trading with the Caldwells back in the day. Said they always had the best sweet corn in the county." "I'm hoping to bring some of that back," Rebecca replied, walking him toward the weathered utility pole near the house. "Do you know when the farm fell into disrepair?" Ray scratched his chin thoughtfully. "Must have been after Old Man Caldwell. That would be James Caldwell, passed about 20 years ago. His son had moved to Nashville, wasn't interested in farming. Place got sold to some developer with big plans, but nothing ever came of it. Bank foreclosed eventually." This information filled in some gaps in Rebecca's understanding of the property's recent history, but her mind kept returning to the journal and its much earlier writer, Eleanor Caldwell from 1776. While the electrical crew worked, Rebecca and Lily tackled the kitchen, scrubbing decades of grime from countertops and cabinets. By afternoon, the lights flickered on, the ancient refrigerator hummed to life, and the well pump pushed clean water through the taps. Small victories that felt monumental. "Next up, internet," Lily declared, wiping sweat from her forehead. "I can't believe it's 2023, and we're living like pioneers." True pioneers didn't have electricity either, Rebecca pointed out with a smile. But yes, internet is on the list. For now, let's focus on making this place livable. After the crew departed, Rebecca retrieved the metal box from her truck. At the kitchen table, now clean enough to use, she and Lily examined their find more carefully in the proper light. "It's really from 1776?" Lily asked, hovering over her mother's shoulder as Rebecca gently opened the journal. "The date indicates that," Rebecca replied, "and the paper quality, binding style, and ink are consistent with that period." She carefully turned the first page, revealing elegant handwriting that flowed across the yellowed paper. "I, Eleanor Caldwell, begin this account in my 32nd year, having established our homestead in the territory now called Tennessee. My husband, Thomas, believes documenting our settlement may prove valuable to those who follow, though I write equally for myself, to make sense of the remarkable circumstances that have befallen us." Rebecca read the passage aloud, her historian's training automatically analyzing the language patterns. "This is authentic," she murmured. "The syntax, the vocabulary, it's consistent with educated writing of the late 18th century. Lily picked up the medallion, which gleamed dully in the afternoon light, streaming through the kitchen windows. "What about this thing? It doesn't look like Revolutionary War stuff I've seen in textbooks." Rebecca examined the curious object. Now properly cleaned, the medallion revealed more details. The tree on one side had what appeared to be small figures beneath its branches, and the strange symbols on the reverse were accompanied by a series of concentric circles. "It's not typical colonial American design," she agreed. "The craftsmanship is extraordinary, though. Look how detailed the engraving is, especially considering the tools available at that time." Making history interesting to high school students had been Rebecca's specialty throughout her teaching career. She'd always found ways to connect historical events to modern life, helping teenagers understand that history wasn't just dry facts in textbooks, but the vivid stories of real people facing challenges not unlike their own. Now, holding tangible evidence of such a story in her hands, she felt a familiar thrill of discovery. "We've put a lot of work into researching and presenting this incredible story. If you're enjoying it, please hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you never miss our uploads. Now let's get back to Rebecca's extraordinary discovery. Let's read more," Lily suggested, pulling up a chair. Rebecca carefully turned to the next pages, where Eleanor Caldwell had continued her narrative. "Our journey from Virginia was fraught with peril, yet we persevered, driven by Thomas's conviction that a better life awaited in these western territories. We have constructed a modest cabin and begun clearing fields for planting, though the labor is ceaseless and our progress slow. I must now record an event so extraordinary I fear it strains credulity, yet I swear by all I hold sacred that what follows is true. 3 days passed, while digging for a root cellar beneath our barn, Thomas uncovered a peculiar object, a medallion of silver-bearing symbols unlike any we have encountered. That same night, a traveler arrived at our homestead, a man of strange appearance and manner, who spoke with an accent I could not place. The journal went on to describe the visitor, who called himself Solomon and claimed to be a scout for settlers further west. He had shown immediate and unusual interest in the medallion, offering to buy it for a considerable sum. When the Caldwells refused, explaining they believed it might be important to understanding the land's previous inhabitants, The man had grown agitated before departing suddenly the following morning. Thomas believes we were wise to keep counsel regarding where exactly the medallion was found, for there was something in the stranger's manner that inspired caution. We have returned it to the earth for safekeeping, along with this account, should misfortune befall us. Rebecca and Lily exchanged glances. They reburied it, Lily said. And then what? Why didn't they retrieve it later? I don't know, Rebecca admitted, turning more pages. The subsequent entries detailed the Caldwells' efforts to establish their farm, interactions with indigenous peoples, described with surprising respect for the era, and occasional references to continued interest. In the medallion, Eleanor wrote of studying the symbols, trying to decipher their meaning, and her growing conviction that they represented a language far older than European settlement of the continent. 6 months after the initial entry, Eleanor wrote, Solomon has returned, this time with companions. They presented themselves as land surveyors, yet their questions focused suspiciously on our cellar and any artifacts we might have discovered. Thomas sent them away with assurances we had found nothing of interest, but later confided his fear that our discovery may be more significant than we initially believed. Tonight, we move the medallion and these papers to a more secure location. Thomas has constructed a hidden compartment beneath the root cellar floor, accessible only to one. Who knows of its existence? I pray this precaution proves unnecessary, yet recent events have left me unsettled. This was the journal's final entry. The remaining pages were blank. That's it? Lily asked, disappointment evident in her voice. What happened to them? Did this Solomon guy come back? What is the medallion? Rebecca shook her head. I don't know. The historical record shows the Caldwell family remained on this land for generations, so they survived whatever concerns they had. But why they never retrieved these items remains a mystery. She carefully examined the medallion again. The symbols didn't correspond to any Native American writing systems she was familiar with, nor did they match European or Asian languages of the period. We need more information, she decided. I'll contact Dr. Harriet Chen at the State University. She specializes in early American history and might have insights. And there's bound to be county historical records that could fill in some blanks about the Caldwell family. The remainder of the day passed in a blur of continued cleaning and organization. Rebecca managed to get the ancient water heater working, providing them with their first hot showers in the farmhouse. They made a trip to town for groceries and essential supplies, careful to budget every dollar of Rebecca's dwindling funds. At the local hardware store, Rebecca struck up a conversation with the owner while purchasing work gloves and basic repair materials. Mitchell, you said, the man repeated when she introduced herself, taking on the old Caldwell place all by yourself. With my daughter, Rebecca confirmed. It's a big project, but we're determined. The owner, whose nameplate identified him as Harold Jenkins, studied her with newfound interest. Brave undertaking. That property needs a lot of work, but it's good land underneath all that neglect. He leaned forward conspirationally. Between you and me, Preston Development has been trying to get their hands on that parcel for years. Wanted to build some fancy subdivision, but James Caldwell refused to sell while he was alive, and then the timing never worked out after he passed. Rebecca frowned. Preston Development? Big outfit from Nashville. Owner's son, Blake Preston, comes around every few months to check on properties they're interested in. Smooth talker, that one. Wouldn't be surprised if he pays you a visit once word gets out there's a new owner. This information gave Rebecca pause. Why would a major development company be interested in a remote farm with depleted soil? The property wasn't particularly close to expanding suburban areas, nor did it have special features like river frontage that would make it valuable for upscale housing. Back at the farmhouse, as evening approached, Rebecca found herself drawn again to Eleanor's journal. She studied the detailed descriptions of the farm's original layout, noting with interest that the spring that supplied their water was described as uncommonly sweet and healthful, and that certain fields produced crops of remarkable abundance. A knock at the door startled her from her reading. Lily, who had been organizing her room, came down the hallway with a questioning look. "Are we expecting someone?" she whispered. Rebecca shook her head, moving to the front window to peer out. A sleek black SUV with Nashville plates was parked in their driveway. Standing on the porch was a man in his early 40s, dressed in business casual attire that looked jarringly out of place against the backdrop of the weathered farmhouse. She opened the door cautiously. "Rebecca Mitchell." The man offered a practiced smile and an outstretched hand. "Blake Preston, Preston Development. I heard there was a new owner out here and thought I'd stop by to introduce myself." So Harold Jenkins had been right. Rebecca shook his hand briefly, noticing his firm grip and the expensive watch on his wrist. "Mr. Preston, this is a surprise. Please call me Blake. May I come in? I have a proposition that might interest you." Rebecca hesitated, then stepped back to allow him entry, catching Lily's curious gaze from the hallway. Preston surveyed the interior with barely disguised assessment, noting the signs of ongoing renovation and sparse furnishings. "You've taken on quite a project here," he observed, his tone suggesting he found her efforts quaint rather than impressive. "We're making progress," Rebecca replied evenly. "What can I do for you, Mr. Preston?" He smiled again, apparently unperturbed by her return to formality. "As I mentioned, I have a proposition. My company has been interested in this property for some time. We see significant development potential that would transform this," he gestured vaguely, "challenging situation into a considerable profit for you." "I'm not interested in selling," Rebecca stated firmly. Preston raised an eyebrow. "You haven't heard my offer yet. Preston Development is prepared to pay $60,000 for the property, more than 3 times what you paid at auction. You'd walk away with a substantial profit and none of the headaches of trying to resurrect a failed farm." The figure momentarily took Rebecca aback. Such a sum would solve their immediate financial concerns and provide a cushion while she found new employment. But something felt wrong about Preston's timing and his apparent knowledge of her auction purchase price. "I appreciate the offer, but we've just begun establishing ourselves here. I have plans for this farm." Preston's smile dimmed slightly. "Ms. Mitchell, I admire your enthusiasm, but farming is a difficult business even for those with experience and capital. You appear to have neither." The condescension in his tone ignited a spark of irritation in Rebecca. "Then it's fortunate I'm a quick learner, Mr. Preston. As I said, I'm not interested in selling. Perhaps you should take some time to consider," he suggested, reaching into his jacket to produce a business card. "The offer won't remain open indefinitely. There are certain advantages to moving quickly." The implied pressure only strengthened Rebecca's resolve. "If I change my mind, I'll be in touch, but I wouldn't count on it." Preston's gaze hardened momentarily before his smooth facade returned. Of course. He turned to leave, then paused. By the way, have you found anything interesting on the property? Old structures, historical items? The Caldwell place has quite a history, I'm told. The casual question sent a warning signal through Rebecca's mind. She thought of Eleanor's journal and its mention of the mysterious Solomon who had shown such interest in their discovery. Just the usual debris you'd expect on an old farm, she replied with practiced nonchalance. Why do you ask? Professional. Curiosity. Development often requires historical assessment. He smiled again. I'll see myself out. Do think about my offer, Miss Mitchell. Life throws rare opportunities sometimes. It's wise to recognize them when they appear. After his departure, Lily emerged fully from the hallway. What was that about? Is he trying to buy our farm already? Apparently. So, Rebecca confirmed, watching through the window as Preston's SUV disappeared down their driveway, and he seemed awfully interested in whether we'd found anything historically significant. Lily's eyes widened. Like the medallion? Perhaps. Rebecca picked up Eleanor's journal thoughtfully. But how would he know about that? It's been hidden since 1776. The question hung in the air between them, adding another layer to the mystery surrounding their discovery. As night fell over the farm, Rebecca wondered what connections might exist between the stranger Eleanor had called Solomon and the smooth-talking developer who had just left their porch. 2 centuries separated them, yet both had appeared shortly after the medallion's discovery, both showing unusual interest in what might be buried on Caldwell land. Rebecca returned to the journal, studying Eleanor's precise handwriting as though the faded ink might reveal secrets beyond the written words. Whatever this medallion represented, it had been important enough for the original Caldwells to hide carefully, important enough to document in detail, and now, perhaps, important enough for Preston Development to offer 3 times market value for land that had languished unwanted for years. Mom, Lily said suddenly, did you notice the symbol on Preston's business card? The company logo. Rebecca picked up the card Preston had left. The Preston Development logo was stylized but unmistakable once noticed. A tree with spreading branches, remarkably similar to the one engraved on the ancient medallion. Rebecca stared at the business card, a chill running through her despite the warm evening. The similarity between Preston Development's logo and the medallion's engraving couldn't be coincidental. She placed the card beside the silver artifact on the kitchen table, and the resemblance became even more striking. The same general shape, the same distinctive branch pattern. This can't be random, she murmured, more to herself than to Lily. The question is whether Preston knows about the medallion specifically, or if he's operating on some kind of family knowledge passed down through generations. Like a treasure hunt that's been going on for centuries, Lily suggested, eyes wide with excitement. Rebecca smiled at her daughter's enthusiasm, but felt a growing unease. Maybe. But if that's the case, why the sudden urgency? This medallion has been hidden for nearly 250 years. Why is Preston Development so interested in this property now? She opened her laptop, grateful they'd managed to set up a cellular hotspot for temporary internet access. A search for Preston Development Nashville returned numerous results. News articles about commercial developments, a corporate website showcasing luxury residential communities, and several mentions of community partnerships and charitable initiatives. They look legitimate, Rebecca said, scanning through the corporate profile. Founded in 1976 by William Preston, current CEO Blake Preston took over in 2015. Real estate portfolio worth over $500 million. Lily peered over her shoulder at the screen. Check if there's anything about their company history or family background. Rebecca navigated to the About Us section of the company website. The corporate history was predictably sanitized, focusing on growth metrics and successful projects. A separate page featured executive biographies, including Blake Preston's. His photo matched the man who had just left their farmhouse. Confident smile, carefully styled hair, the polished look of someone accustomed to getting what he wanted. The biography mentioned Preston was a fifth-generation Tennessean whose family had deep historical ties to the region's development since the late 18th century. No specific details were provided about those historical ties, but the time frame aligned perfectly with Eleanor Caldwell's journal. "Mom, look at this," Lily said, pointing to a small section at the bottom of Preston's biography. It says his hobbies include historical artifact collection, specializing in pre-Revolutionary War American objects. Rebecca sat back, processing this information. So our friendly developer isn't just a businessman, he's a collector with specific interest in exactly the time period our medallion comes from. Do you think he knows what it is? What it means? Lily asked. I don't know, Rebecca admitted, but I intend to find out before he comes back with another offer. The next morning, Rebecca contacted Dr. Harriet Chen at the State University, leaving a detailed message about their discovery. While waiting for a response, she and Lily drove to the county records office in Millbrook, hoping to find information about the original Caldwell homestead. The records office was housed in a brick building on the town square, its interior cool and quiet compared to the August heat outside. An elderly clerk named Ms. Pemberton guided them to the historical property record section after Rebecca explained their interest. The Caldwell farm is one of the oldest continuously held properties in the county, Ms. Pemberton informed them, pulling out a large, leather-bound volume. Original land grant signed in 1775, if I recall correctly. The record book confirmed this, showing Thomas Caldwell had received a 200-acre land grant from the colonial government just before the Revolutionary War began. Subsequent pages documented the property's passing through generations of Caldwells, occasional boundary adjustments, and the construction of new farm buildings over the centuries. What can you tell me about the family itself? Rebecca asked. Were the Caldwells prominent in local history? Ms. Pemberton's eyes lit up at the question. Oh my, yes, the early Caldwells were quite remarkable. Thomas served in the Revolutionary War after establishing the homestead. Their farm was known for extraordinary productivity. Some crops grew there that shouldn't have thrived in our soil and climate. The family was also unusually progressive for their time. They educated their daughters when that was rare, maintained peaceful relations with indigenous peoples, and later refused to own slaves when most large landholders did. What about Eleanor Caldwell specifically? Rebecca pressed. The original settler's wife? A fascinating woman by all accounts, Ms. Pemberton replied. Local lore suggests she was something of a healer, knowledgeable about plants and their medicinal properties. People came from considerable distances seeking her remedies. She lowered her voice conspiratorially. Some even called her a witch, though that was common for any woman of intelligence and independence in those days. The clerk disappeared momentarily into a back room, returning with a thinner volume. This contains collected correspondence and personal accounts from early settlers. There are several mentions of Eleanor Caldwell you might find interesting. Rebecca carefully opened the fragile book, finding references to Eleanor scattered throughout. Most described her remedies for various ailments or her gardening expertise, but one account, written by a neighboring settler in 1780, caught Rebecca's attention. Mistress Caldwell's garden yields produce like none other in the territory. Plants that wither on my land flourish in her care, as though the very soil of the Caldwell farm possesses special properties. I have observed her on occasion consulting. Strange markings on a silver disc before planting. Perhaps some European farming tradition unknown to me. The medallion, Lily whispered, reading over Rebecca's shoulder. Rebecca nodded, excitement building. Eleanor hadn't simply found the artifact, she had actively used it, apparently in connection with the farm's legendary productivity. If you're enjoying this incredible story of discovery, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing historical revelations. Now let's continue with Rebecca's investigation. Further research revealed the Caldwell farm had maintained its reputation for exceptional productivity for nearly 200 years, until the mid-1970s, when James Caldwell, the last family member to actively farm the land, reported increasing difficulties with soil quality and crop yields. "That's odd," Rebecca remarked as they drove back to the farm. "Why would land that had been fertile for 2 centuries suddenly decline?" "Maybe whatever made it special wore off," Lily suggested. "Or maybe James Caldwell wasn't using the medallion correctly?" The question lingered as they returned home to find a message from Dr. Chen, who had agreed to examine their discoveries the following day. That evening, Rebecca spread Eleanor's journal, their historical research, and Preston's business card across the kitchen table, trying to connect the pieces. "Let's assume the medallion is the key to the farm's productivity," she said, thinking aloud. Eleanor used it somehow to enhance the soil or determine optimal planting locations. The knowledge was passed down through generations of Caldwells. Then something happened in the 1970s, Lily continued the thought. The farm started failing, and eventually the family lost it. And now Preston Development wants it badly enough to offer way more than market value. Rebecca tapped the business card thoughtfully. And Preston Development was founded in 1976, right around when the farm began declining. She opened her laptop again, searching for news archives from that period. After an hour of digging, she found a small article from the Millbrook Gazette, dated May 1975. Local farmer James Caldwell reports theft of family heirloom from Farmhouse. Caldwell described the stolen item as a silver disc with unusual markings that had been in his family since before the Revolutionary War. No suspects have been identified. "That's it!" Rebecca exclaimed. "Someone stole the original medallion in 1975. The one we found must be a duplicate, or maybe the original was recovered and hidden again." "But who would steal it?" Lily asked. "And why?" Rebecca's gaze fell on Preston's business card. William Preston founded Preston Development in 1976, 1 year after the theft. And now his son collects pre-revolutionary artifacts and wants our land. The implications were disturbing. If the Prestons had somehow learned about the medallion's significance and stolen it, they might have been monitoring the property for decades, waiting for an opportunity to acquire it legally. Rebecca's purchase at auction had disrupted their plans, hence Blake Preston's swift appearance and generous offer. A rattling sound from outside interrupted their theorizing. Rebecca moved to the window, peering out into the darkness. The security lights they'd installed illuminated the yard dimly, showing nothing immediately concerning. Probably just an animal. she reassured Lily, though she double-checked the locks on the doors before they went to bed. That night, Rebecca dreamed of Eleanor Caldwell walking through lush fields, the medallion gleaming in her hand as crops grew visibly in her footsteps. The dream shifted, and suddenly Blake Preston was there, watching from the forest edge, his expression hungry and calculating. She awoke at dawn, the dream lingering uncomfortably. After making coffee, she returned to Eleanor's journal, reading it more carefully. On a second reading, she noticed subtle references she'd missed before, Eleanor mentioning applying the guidance before planting, or consulting the ancient wisdom during full moons. Most intriguing was a passage where Eleanor described burying small clay pots at specific points around the property, each containing soil enriched according to the pattern. The pattern? Could she have meant the symbols on the medallion? Rebecca was still pondering this when a vehicle approached around mid-morning. Rather than Preston's luxury SUV, it was a modest sedan that parked near the house. A woman in her 50s emerged, dressed in practical khakis and a university polo shirt. "Dr. Chen, I presume," Rebecca called, walking out to meet her. The professor nodded, offering a firm handshake. "Rebecca Mitchell, thank you for reaching out. Your message about an 18th century journal and artifact was too intriguing to ignore." Inside, Dr. Chen examined Eleanor's journal with the reverent care of a true historian, using cotton gloves she'd brought specifically for this purpose. Her expression grew increasingly animated as she turned the delicate pages. "This is extraordinary," she confirmed after her initial review. "Absolutely authentic to the period, and a remarkably detailed account of early Tennessee settlement." She looked up at Rebecca. "This alone is historically significant. Where did you say you found it?" Rebecca described the discovery in the root cellar, then carefully unwrapped the medallion. Dr. Chen fell silent when she saw it, her professional composure momentarily slipping. "May I?" she asked, reaching for it with gloved hands. The professor examined the artifact meticulously, studying the tree engraving and the mysterious symbols with a magnifying glass she produced from her bag. "This is unlike anything I've seen from colonial America," she finally said. "The craftsmanship is exceptional, but the style doesn't match European, Native American, or African traditions of the period." She turned it over repeatedly. "These symbols, they're not any writing system I recognize, yet they're clearly intentional, organized in a pattern that suggests language or mathematical notation." "Do you think it could be older than colonial settlement?" Rebecca asked. "Perhaps. Something indigenous peoples created?" Dr. Chen shook her head slowly. "It doesn't match known indigenous metallurgy either. If I had to guess, and this is purely speculation, I'd say it appears more, well, this will sound strange, but more advanced than 18th century craftsmanship. Should allow." Lily, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "You mean like it was made with technology that shouldn't have existed back then?" The professor smiled kindly at her. "Something like that. The precision of these engravings would be difficult to achieve even with modern tools." She carefully placed the medallion back on the table. "Have you shown this to anyone else?" Rebecca hesitated, then described Blake Preston's visit and the similarities between the medallion's tree symbol and his company logo. Dr. Chen frowned. "That's concerning. Artifacts of unknown origin can attract unhealthy attention from collectors willing to operate outside legal channels." She pulled out her phone, showing them a news article. "Just last month, A previously unknown Native American artifact disappeared from a private collection in Kentucky. The owner reported men claiming to be from an insurance company examined. It vanished that night. The implications were clear. Their discovery might put them at risk. Dr. Chen suggested documenting everything thoroughly and considering whether to register the find with the State Historical Society, which would offer some protection. In the meantime, she advised, be cautious about who knows what you've found. I'd like to bring in a colleague who specializes in ancient languages and symbols if you're comfortable with that. She might be able to decipher these markings. Rebecca agreed, and they arranged for a follow-up visit in 2 days. After Dr. Chen departed, the farmhouse seemed unusually quiet. You think Preston might try to steal it? Lily asked bluntly. I think we need to be careful, Rebecca replied. If his family has been seeking this medallion for generations, they're unlikely to give up easily. That afternoon, they explored the property more thoroughly, looking for any signs of the clay pots Eleanor had mentioned burying. The task was daunting given the farm's size and the decades of overgrowth. But Rebecca had a theory. Eleanor wrote about burying them according to the pattern, she explained as they walked the perimeter. What if the symbols on the medallion aren't just writing, but a map of the farm itself? They returned to the house and laid the medallion on a printed aerial view of the property. The concentric circles on one side did indeed resemble a simplified map if oriented with north at the top. Specific symbols appeared at what would be cardinal points around the property's boundaries. It's worth investigating, Rebecca decided. Let's check the northern boundary first. The northern edge of the farm bordered a small creek that had partially eroded its banks over the years. As they searched along it, Lily spotted something unusual, a section of exposed clay that didn't match the surrounding soil. Careful digging revealed a small pottery vessel, crudely formed but intact, filled with what appeared to be soil mixed with unfamiliar seeds or plant matter. One down, Rebecca said triumphantly. Let's see if we can find the others before sunset. By evening, they had located 3 of what they suspected were Eleanor's cultivation pots, each positioned precisely where symbols appeared on the medallion's circular pattern. The 4th location, to the west, proved more challenging as it was, now covered by thick brush. As darkness approached, they reluctantly suspended their search, returning to the farmhouse with their discoveries. Rebecca carefully opened one pot, finding the contents remarkably preserved. Soil that still appeared rich and dark, mixed with seed-like objects, unlike any modern crop she recognized. What do you think they are? Lily asked, peering at the strange seeds. I don't know, Rebecca admitted, but I suspect they're part of whatever made this farm extraordinarily productive for 2 centuries. They were discussing whether to plant some of the seeds as an experiment when headlights swept across the farmhouse windows. A vehicle was coming up the driveway, not the familiar shape of Dr. Chen's sedan, but the distinctive outline of Blake Preston's SUV. He's back already? Lily whispered, anxiety evident in her voice. Rebecca quickly gathered the journal, medallion, and clay pot, securing them in a kitchen cabinet. Stay inside, she instructed Lily. I'll handle this. She stepped onto the porch as Preston parked, noticing that this time he wasn't alone. A second man remained in the passenger seat, his features indistinct in the gathering twilight. Miss Mitchell, Preston called, approaching with the same practiced smile. I hope I'm not interrupting your evening. I wanted to follow up on our conversation and see if you'd had a chance to consider my offer. My answer hasn't changed, Rebecca replied firmly. The farm isn't for sale. Preston's smile didn't waver, but something hardened in his eyes. I understand your reluctance, but circumstances have changed. I'm now authorized to offer you $80,000, more than 4 times your investment. I think you'll agree that's more than generous. The escalation of his offer only confirmed Rebecca's suspicions. Whatever Preston believed was on this land, he valued it far beyond the property's apparent worth. Mr. Preston, she said, maintaining a calm she didn't entirely feel, I appreciate your persistence, but I need to be clear. This farm is my home now. No amount of money will change that. Preston's cordial facade slipped momentarily. Ms. Mitchell, I don't think you understand the situation. This property has significance beyond its agricultural potential. My family has historical interest in this land that dates back centuries. Historical interest? Rebecca echoed, watching him carefully. What kind of historical interest would justify offering 4 times market value? Preston seemed to catch himself, the smooth businessman persona returning. Family sentiment primarily. The Prestons and Caldwells share a complicated history. In this region, he paused, studying her with new intensity, but perhaps you've already discovered some of that history yourself. People often find interesting items when renovating old properties. The fishing for information was so transparent that Rebecca almost laughed. Instead, she met his gaze steadily. Just the usual assortment of rusty farm equipment and mouse nests, I'm afraid. Nothing of historical significance. Something like disappointment flickered across Preston's face, quickly masked. Well, if you do come across anything unusual, I'd be very interested. As a collector, I'm always looking to preserve historical artifacts properly, with appropriate compensation. Of course, I'll keep that in mind, Rebecca replied neutrally. Preston retreated a step, his manner cooling. My offer remains open for 48 hours, Ms. Mitchell. After that, I can't guarantee the same terms will be available. The statement carried an undertone that felt uncomfortably like a threat. As he returned to his vehicle, Rebecca noticed the passenger door opening. The second man stepped out briefly, ostensibly to stretch his legs, but his gaze swept systematically across the farmhouse and surrounding property, assessing rather than admiring. Something about his methodical survey sent a chill down Rebecca's spine. The man caught her watching him and nodded once, a gesture neither friendly nor hostile, before returning to the SUV. As they drove away, Rebecca couldn't shake the feeling that Preston's next visit wouldn't be so polite. Back inside, Lily was waiting anxiously. What did he want? The same thing, just with more money attached, Rebecca replied, locking the door with a newfound sense of urgency. And I think he's getting impatient. They discussed calling the sheriff about Preston's increasingly pressured approach, but without any explicit threat, there was little to report. Instead, Rebecca focused on securing their discoveries, moving the journal, medallion, and clay pots to a less obvious hiding place in a kitchen floorboard they discovered was loose during cleaning. That night, as Lily slept, Rebecca sat at the kitchen table with Eleanor's journal, reading by lamplight. She turned to the final entries again, searching for any clue about what had happened after Eleanor and Thomas hid the medallion. Why had they never retrieved it? What had become of the mysterious Solomon who had shown such interest in their discovery? As she carefully turned a page, a folded piece of paper fell out, thinner and visibly newer than the journal's original pages, yet still aged. Unfolding it revealed handwriting different from Eleanor's, more hurried, less formal, and dated. 1975. To whoever finds this, the original medallion has been stolen. I've placed this replica, crafted by my grandfather, with Eleanor's journal for safekeeping. The Caldwell legacy must be protected from those who would exploit it. The soil grows weaker without proper tending according to the ancient pattern. Trust no one named Preston. James Caldwell. The message confirmed Rebecca's suspicions while raising new questions. What was the Caldwell legacy that needed protection? How had James known to distrust the Prestons specifically? And most importantly, if what they'd found was only a replica, where was the original medallion now? Rebecca stared at James Caldwell's note, pieces of the puzzle shifting in her mind. The medallion they'd found was a replica, skillfully crafted, but not the original artifact that had apparently powered the farm's legendary productivity for nearly 2 centuries. The original had been stolen in 1975, presumably by the Prestons or someone working for them, yet they still wanted this land badly enough to offer 4 times its market value. Why? If they already possessed the original medallion, what more could they want from this property? She carefully refolded James's note and slipped it back into the journal, then stood by the kitchen window, gazing out at the moonlit fields. The farm was beautiful in the silvery light, its flaws and neglect softened by darkness. Somewhere out there, Eleanor Caldwell had walked these same acres, using the medallion to create extraordinary abundance from ordinary earth. Rebecca's phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Chen. My linguistics colleague is very interested in your find. Can meet day after tomorrow. Also, did some research on Preston development. Interesting history. We'll share when we meet. The message heightened Rebecca's sense that they were dealing with something far more significant than a simple historical curiosity. She replied, confirming the meeting, then tried to get some sleep, though her dreams were troubled by images of Preston watching the farmhouse from the tree line. Morning brought renewed determination. Over breakfast, Rebecca shared James Caldwell's note with Lily. So the medallion we have is a fake? Lily asked, disappointed. Not fake exactly, a replica, Rebecca corrected. James called it a copy his grandfather made, which would date it to the early 1900s, and it was important enough that he hid it with Eleanor's journal when he realized someone was after the original. But if Preston has the original, why does he want our land so badly? It was the central question, and Rebecca had been pondering it throughout the night. I think there's something else here. Something that requires both the medallion and the land itself. Remember how Eleanor wrote about burying those clay pots according to the pattern? What if the medallion is like an instruction manual for something bigger? They spent the morning continuing their search for the remaining clay pots Eleanor had described. The western boundary proved challenging, overgrown with thorny underbrush that had thrived during the farm's years of neglect. By midday, sweaty and scratched, they finally located the 4th pot buried near the base of an ancient oak tree. That's all of them, Rebecca said, carefully extracting the vessel from the soil. Like the others, it contained what appeared to be specially prepared earth mixed with unusual seeds. What do we do with them now? Lily asked, as they carried their find back to the farmhouse. I'm not sure, Rebecca admitted. Eleanor's journal mentions placing them at specific points on the property, but not what happened after that. It's like having pieces of a puzzle without the picture on the box. After lunch, they drove into town to visit the County Historical Society, hoping to find more information about the Caldwell family and possibly the Prestons as well. The society was housed in a converted Victorian home just off the town square, its rooms filled with glass cases displaying artifacts from the region's past. The curator, Martha Wilkins, lit up when Rebecca mentioned they were the new owners of the Caldwell farm. The Caldwell property, one of our oldest homesteads. We have quite a collection of materials related to the family. She led them to a research room where several boxes of Caldwell family archives had been preserved. Letters, photographs, farm records, and even some personal items donated after James Caldwell's death. As they carefully examined the materials, a pattern emerged. Generation after generation of Caldwells had maintained detailed records of crop rotations, planting locations and yields, all far exceeding typical production for the region. Most interesting were references to the founder's method, or sometimes simply the pattern in these records. Various Caldwells had written about following this method, with one 1899 letter from Thomas Caldwell III to his son stating, "Remember that the pattern must be followed precisely. The medallion guides the placement, but the timing depends on the stars. This knowledge is our family's greatest inheritance." "The medallion and astronomy," Rebecca murmured. "The symbols might include star charts or calendrical information." Among the more recent materials was a newspaper clipping from 1972 showing James Caldwell standing proudly beside an extraordinary corn harvest. The caption noted it was the last record yield from the Caldwell farm. 3 years before the medallion was stolen, Lily whispered, connecting the timeline. They also discovered a family photograph album containing pictures spanning from the 1880s through the 1970s. One faded color photograph from 1970 showed James Caldwell shaking hands with a younger man, identified in the caption as William Preston. Both men were smiling, but James's expression appeared strained. "Preston Development's founder," Rebecca noted, so the families did know each other. Martha Wilkins, who had been helping another visitor, returned and noticed the photograph they were examining. "Ah, the Caldwell-Preston connection. That's an interesting piece of local history. What can you tell us about it?" Rebecca asked. "Creating and sharing this extraordinary story has been our passion. If you're enjoying this historical mystery, please hit that subscribe button and notification bell. Your support helps us bring more incredible stories like this to life. Now back to the historical society." Martha's expression turned thoughtful. "Well, the Preston family has been in this region almost as long as the Caldwells, though they took different paths. While the Caldwells remained farmers, the Prestons became merchants, then bankers, and eventually developers. Local legend has it that there was some dispute between the families dating back to Revolutionary times, something about a treasure or special knowledge that one family claimed the other had stolen. "And in recent times?" Rebecca pressed. "William Preston tried repeatedly to buy the Caldwell farm in the 1970s, offered well above market value, but James refused to sell. After James passed and his son inherited, the property changed hands several times, but somehow always slipped through Preston Development's fingers. Some folks thought it was almost like the land itself was resisting them." Martha smiled apologetically. "Just local superstition, of course. Or perhaps not," Rebecca thought. If the medallion was somehow connected to the land's fertility, maybe there was something to the idea that the property resisted those who had stolen the artifact. As they We're preparing to leave. Martha mentioned one more detail. You might want to check the old Caldwell family cemetery on your property. Most of the early settlers are buried there, including Eleanor and Thomas. It's probably quite overgrown now, but it should be on the eastern ridge, if I recall correctly. Rebecca thanked her for the suggestion. A family cemetery hadn't been mentioned in the auction paperwork, but it made sense that the early Caldwells would have established one on their property. On the drive home, they stopped at the hardware store for supplies to better secure the farmhouse, new locks, motion-sensing lights, and materials to repair. Broken windows. Rebecca couldn't shake the feeling that Preston's next move might be more direct than a simple purchase offer. Harold Jenkins, the store owner, raised an eyebrow at their selections. Expecting trouble out at the old Caldwell place? Just being cautious, Rebecca replied, not elaborating. Jenkins nodded knowingly. Heard Blake Preston paid you a visit. Man doesn't take no for an answer easily. Have you known the Prestons? Long? Rebecca asked casually. Known of them, mostly. William Preston, Blake's father, used to come around personally in the 70s. Had some kind of obsession with the Caldwell property. After James Caldwell reported that family heirloom stolen, a lot of folks had their suspicions about who was behind it, though nothing was ever proven. Jenkins lowered his voice. Between you and me, the Prestons have always had a reputation for getting what they want, one way or another. It was another piece of the puzzle, confirming the long-standing tension between the families. As they loaded their purchases into the truck, Rebecca noticed a black SUV parked across the street. Not Preston's, but similar. A man sat in the driver's seat, apparently engrossed in his phone. When he glanced up and caught Rebecca looking, he immediately started the vehicle and drove away. She fingered James Caldwell's note in her pocket. The Caldwell legacy must be protected from those who would exploit it, he had written. Rebecca was beginning to understand what that legacy might be, and why the Prestons had pursued it for generations. The question now was whether she could uncover the truth before Preston made his next move. After a tense, largely sleepless night, Rebecca and Lily returned to the family cemetery as soon as daylight allowed. They brought gardening, tools, water, and Rebecca's digital camera to document what they found. The morning was misty, dew clinging to the tall grass as they made their way up the eastern ridge. "Do you think they'll come back?" Lily asked, glancing over her shoulder toward the farmhouse, now partially obscured by the rising ground. "Possibly," Rebecca admitted, "but I doubt they'll try anything in broad daylight." She didn't voice her deeper concern that Preston might escalate from trespassing to more aggressive tactics now that his security patrol ruse had failed. They reached the cemetery and began carefully clearing vegetation from around Eleanor Caldwell's headstone. With the overgrowth removed, the circular pattern of embedded stones became fully visible. Concentric rings interspersed with smaller stones placed at specific points that perfectly matched the arrangement of symbols on the medallion. "It's definitely the same pattern," Lily confirmed, comparing a photo of the medallion on Rebecca's phone to the ground design. Rebecca nodded, taking pictures from various angles. "The question is, what does it mean? Is it purely symbolic, or does it have some practical purpose?" They worked methodically through the small cemetery, clearing debris from each Caldwell grave. Most featured similar circular patterns, though some appeared more elaborate than others. Thomas Caldwell's headstone, beside Eleanor's, incorporated the tree symbol prominently, with roots extending downward into the circular pattern at its base. As they cleared James Caldwell's grave, the last family member to actively farm the land. Rebecca noticed something different. Instead of the circular pattern, a single line of text was carved at the base of his headstone. The pattern breaks when the key is taken. The key, Rebecca repeated. The original medallion. She sat back on her heels, brushing dirt from her hands as she considered the implications. What if the medallion isn't just a guide for planting? What if it's literally a key that activates whatever makes this land special? Activates how? Lily asked, reasonably skeptical. It's just a piece of metal. I don't know, Rebecca admitted. But James stopped getting extraordinary yields after the medallion was stolen, and he specifically created a replica and hid it with Eleanor's journal, suggesting he thought it might still serve some purpose. They finished documenting the cemetery and returned to the farmhouse to prepare for their meeting with Dr. Chen and her linguistics colleague. Rebecca was securing the replica medallion and journal in her bag when Lily called from the kitchen window. "Mom, someone's coming up the driveway." Rebecca tensed, moving quickly to see who was approaching. Relief washed over her when she recognized Dr. Chen's sedan rather than Preston's SUV or the mysterious dark car from the previous night. Two women emerged from the vehicle, Dr. Chen and a younger woman carrying a laptop case and what appeared to be specialized photographic equipment. "Miss Mitchell," Dr. Chen called, waving as they approached the house. "This is Dr. Maya Patel, the colleague I mentioned. She specializes in ancient writing systems and archaeoastronomy." After introductions and a brief explanation of the previous night's events, which clearly concerned both academics, they settled at the kitchen table where Rebecca laid out their discoveries. Eleanor's journal, the replica medallion, one of the clay pots, and photos of the cemetery patterns. Dr. Patel examined each item methodically, her expression growing increasingly animated. "This is remarkable," she finally said, looking up from the medallion. "These symbols combine elements from several ancient writing systems, including some Phoenician characters, but arranged in a pattern that suggests astronomical significance." "Astronomical?" Rebecca asked. "Like star positions?" "Precisely, Doctor," Patel confirmed. "The concentric circles likely represent celestial spheres, a common way of depicting the cosmos in many ancient traditions. The specific symbols could mark star positions or seasonal alignments. May I?" She gestured to her laptop. At Rebecca's nod, Dr. Patel opened a specialized software program and began comparing the medallion's pattern with star charts. After several minutes of adjustment, she sat back with a satisfied expression. "It's a sky map," she explained, turning the screen so they could all see. "These symbols mark specific star positions as they would have appeared from this latitude around 1775–1776, when Eleanor first documented the medallion. But there's something else. The arrangement creates a calendar of sorts, marking significant astronomical events like solstices and equinoxes. If you've been captivated by this historical mystery so far, make sure to hit the subscribe button and notification bell. Your support helps us continue bringing these fascinating stories to life. Now let's discover what Dr. Patel has revealed about the mysterious medallion. "A calendar tied to planting cycles would make sense for a farm," Rebecca observed. "Many agricultural societies base their planting schedules on astronomical events." "True," Dr. Patel agreed. "But this goes beyond simple seasonal markers. The precision is extraordinary for the 18th century, and some of these alignments are surprisingly complex." She pointed to specific symbols. These appear to track lunar cycles as well as solar ones. And these others, she hesitated. These don't correspond to any known astronomical body in our solar system. Dr. Chen leaned forward. What are you suggesting, Maya? I'm not entirely sure, Dr. Patel admitted. But the pattern incorporates elements I've seen in much older astronomical systems, Sumerian, Egyptian, even pre-Columbian American. It's as though whoever created this was working from knowledge that predates colonial America by thousands of years. The implications hung in the air between them. Rebecca thought of Eleanor's journal, describing the mysterious visitor Solomon, who had shown such interest in their discovery. What about the clay pots? She asked. Eleanor described burying them at specific points around the property, according to the pattern. Dr. Patel examined the pot and its contents with growing fascination. The positioning would make sense if you were trying to create a scale model of the celestial pattern on the ground. As above, so below, it's a concept found in many ancient mystical traditions. And the contents, Rebecca pressed, they look like unusual seeds mixed with specially prepared soil. Dr. Chen took a small sample, examining it under a portable microscope she'd brought. Some of these are definitely seeds, though not varieties I recognize immediately. Others appear to be mineral compounds. I'd need a lab analysis to be certain, but they could be trace elements that enhance soil fertility. Eleanor's journal mentioned unusual productivity, Rebecca explained. The farm maintained extraordinary yields for nearly 2 centuries until the original medallion was stolen in 1975. Dr. Patel's eyes widened. Then you've found it, a replica, not the original. Rebecca nodded, sharing James Caldwell's note. Both academics read it with growing excitement. This is consistent with what I've been researching about Preston development, Dr. Chen said. After finding your message intriguing, I did some digging into their corporate history. William Preston established the company in 1976 with a sudden influx of capital that financial journals at the time couldn't fully explain. Within 5 years, they'd acquired several properties with unusual agricultural histories. Properties, like this one? Rebecca asked. Similar in some ways, Dr. Chen confirmed. Each had been family-owned for generations, with reportedly exceptional productivity that declined shortly before Preston acquired them. And each purchase was preceded by reports of theft or vandalism. The pattern was disturbing, suggesting the Prestons had systematically targeted properties with characteristics similar to the Caldwell farm, possibly acquiring artifacts like the medallion from each. What would be the purpose? Lily asked, speaking up for the first time since the scientific discussion began. Why collect these things from different farms? Dr. Patel looked thoughtful. If each medallion is indeed a key to enhanced agricultural productivity through this astronomical alignment system, possessing multiple such keys could represent significant agricultural advantage, especially in today's climate of industrial farming and food security concerns. But it's more than that, Rebecca said slowly, pieces connecting in her mind. Preston doesn't want to farm this land. He wants to develop it, turn it into housing or commercial property. That makes no sense, Lily objected. Why steal something that makes land incredibly fertile just to pave over the land? Dr. Chen's expression turned grave. Unless fertility isn't the only special quality these properties possess, or unless development serves some purpose we haven't yet understood. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of vehicles approaching, multiple engines growing louder as they neared the farmhouse. Rebecca moved to the window and felt her heart sink. 3 vehicles were coming up the driveway, Blake Preston's SUV in the lead, followed by a dark sedan similar to the one from the previous night and a large pickup truck. "It's Preston," she said tersely, "and he's brought reinforcements." Dr. Chen joined her at the window, frowning. "That's concerning. Should we call the sheriff?" Rebecca was already dialing. Deputy Garcia said she'd file a report about last night's trespassing. This might qualify as harassment. The call connected, but to her dismay, the dispatcher informed her that all deputies were currently responding to a multi-vehicle accident on the highway. Someone would come as soon as possible, but it might be at least 30 minutes. Outside, the vehicles parked in a semicircle that partially blocked the driveway. Blake Preston emerged from his SUV, looking immaculate despite the summer heat. From the sedan stepped 2 men who moved with the alert precision of security professionals. The pickup contained what appeared to be survey equipment and 2 more men in work clothes. "Planning a survey without permission," Rebecca noted grimly. "That's trespassing at minimum." "We should document this," Dr. Chen suggested, taking out her phone to record video. Preston approached the house directly, his confident stride suggesting he expected compliance rather than resistance. Rebecca decided to meet him on the porch rather than allowing him to reach the door. Lily and the 2 academics stayed inside, but positioned themselves to watch and listen. "Ms. Mitchell," Preston called as she stepped onto the porch, "I see you have visitors. I hope I'm not interrupting." "You are," Rebecca replied flatly. "And you're trespassing. I've already called the sheriff." Preston's smile didn't waver. "A simple misunderstanding. I'm here on legitimate business. A required environmental survey before making a formal development proposal for adjacent properties. Some measurements need to be taken from various perspectives, including from your land." The explanation was smooth, but obviously fabricated. Rebecca crossed her arms. "You need permission to access private property for such surveys, Mr. Preston. Permission I haven't granted." For the first time, Preston's composure showed a crack, a slight tightening around his eyes. "Ms. Mitchell, I've been more than patient. My offer was extremely generous, considering the property's condition. Your reluctance suggests you may have discovered something that you believe increases the land's value. Or perhaps I simply don't want to sell my home," Rebecca countered. Preston's gaze shifted briefly to the kitchen window where Dr. Chen was visible, recording the interaction. "You've brought in experts," he observed. "Historians, I presume? Researching the property's past? Found anything? Illuminating?" The fishing for information was transparent. Rebecca maintained her neutral expression. "My guest's purpose here is none of your concern, Mr. Preston. Now I need to ask you and your team to leave immediately." Preston's cordial facade dissolved entirely. "I don't think you understand the situation, Ms. Mitchell. My family has been tracking items connected to this property for generations. We know exactly what's here and what it's worth. The only question is whether you'll benefit from that value or become an obstacle to progress." The threat, though veiled, was unmistakable. Rebecca felt a chill despite the warm morning. "Are you threatening me, Mr. Preston?" "Merely stating facts," he replied, his tone hardening. "My associates conducted a preliminary survey last night and confirmed our suspicions. The Caldwell legacy remains intact despite James's efforts to conceal it. We're prepared to extract that legacy with or without your cooperation," Rebecca thought quickly. Preston clearly believed they'd found something significant last night, though his associates couldn't have located the hidden journal or replica medallion. He was bluffing, trying to pressure her into revealing what they'd actually discovered. "I've documented this conversation," she informed him, nodding toward Dr. Chen's visible recording. "Any further trespassing or threats will be reported to authorities. Now, for the last time, please leave my property." Preston stared at her for a long moment, calculation evident in his eyes. Finally, he stepped back. "My final offer is $100,000, Ms. Mitchell. Available for the next 24 hours only. After that, circumstances may become less favorable for negotiation." Without waiting for a response, he turned and walked back to his assembled team, speaking briefly to the men before they all returned to their vehicles. As they drove away, Rebecca noticed one of the security-type men watching the house intently, speaking into a phone or radio device. Back inside, the atmosphere was tense. "That was definitely a threat," Dr. Chen stated, stopping her recording. "We should take this to the sheriff immediately." "And tell them what?" Rebecca asked. "That Preston made a generous offer with vague warnings attached. It's his word against ours about what he implied. Dr. Patel had been examining the medallion during the confrontation. Whatever this is connected to, it's clearly valuable enough that the Prestons have pursued it for generations. That kind of determination suggests something far beyond ordinary agricultural benefits." Rebecca nodded, her resolve hardening. "Preston said his associates confirmed their suspicions during their trespassing last night. They must have found something we haven't yet discovered." "The cemetery," Lily suggested. "We disturbed the ground there yesterday, cleared the graves. They might have seen signs of our work, or the locations where we dug up the clay pots," Rebecca added. "We need to figure out what connects all these elements before Preston makes his next move." Dr. Patel held up the medallion, turning it to catch the light. "I've been thinking about these symbols that don't correspond to known celestial bodies. What if they're not stars or planets at all? What if they're locations, specific points on the land itself?" The suggestion resonated with what they'd already discovered. Rebecca spread out a property survey map on the table, and Dr. Patel placed the medallion over it, aligning the cardinal directions. "If we treat these unknown symbols as terrestrial rather than celestial markers," Dr. Patel explained, "and scale the medallion pattern to the property boundaries." She marked several points where unusual symbols intersected with the property lines. To Rebecca's surprise, 4 of the points corresponded exactly with where they'd found Eleanor's clay pots. But there was a 5th point near the center of the property that they hadn't yet explored. "What's at this central location?" Dr. Chen asked, pointing to the 5th marker. "Mom, was that—" Lily began. "I don't know," Rebecca replied, "but I think we're being watched." Back at the farm, they worked together to install the new locks and security lights. The physical labor helped channel Rebecca's growing anxiety into something productive. By late afternoon, the house felt more secure, though she knew determined intruders would find a way in if they really wanted to. "Should we call the sheriff?" Lily asked as they took a water break on the porch. Rebecca considered the option. "And tell them what? That a developer made us a generous offer we rejected? That we found a replica of a medallion that was stolen 50 years ago? That we think we're being watched but have no proof?" She shook her head. "We need more concrete evidence before involving authorities." After dinner, they decided to look for the family cemetery Martha had mentioned. The eastern ridge was about a quarter mile from the house, a gentle slope rather than a dramatic elevation. As predicted, the area was overgrown, with tall grasses and young trees reclaiming what had once been cleared land. Just as the setting sun cast long shadows across the property, Lily spotted it, a low stone wall emerging from the vegetation, encircling what appeared to be a small burial ground. Inside, weathered headstones stood in neat rows, some tilting with age, others still perfectly upright. The oldest graves dated to the 1770s, including those of Eleanor and Thomas Caldwell, the original settlers. Their headstones were simple, but dignified, carved from local stone and featuring the same tree symbol that appeared on the medallion. "Look at this," Rebecca called, kneeling beside Eleanor's grave. Around the base of the headstone, barely visible beneath years of accumulated soil and plant matter, was a circular pattern of small stones embedded in the ground. The arrangement matched the concentric circles on the medallion. "It's the same pattern," Lily confirmed, brushing away more dirt to reveal the complete circle. "Why would they put it on her grave?" "Maybe it's not just a map of the farm," Rebecca suggested. "Maybe it's something more, a key to whatever makes this land special." As darkness gathered, they reluctantly left the cemetery, planning to return the next day with proper tools to clear the area. Walking back to the farmhouse, Rebecca couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. She paused several times, scanning the tree line, but saw nothing definitive, just shadows that seemed to shift when viewed directly. That night, Rebecca woke suddenly at 2 a.m., unsure what had disturbed her sleep. She lay still, listening intently. The old farmhouse creaked and settled, but beneath those familiar sounds was something else, a faint metallic click from somewhere outside. Moving quietly to the window, she peered out into the darkness. One of their newly installed security lights had activated on the far side of the house, illuminating a portion of the yard. Just at the edge of the light's reach, a figure moved with deliberate stealth toward the barn. Rebecca woke Lily, whispering for her to stay in her room and call 911 if she heard anything alarming. Then, grabbing a flashlight and her phone, she crept downstairs and out the back door, staying close to the house's shadow. The figure had disappeared into the barn, the original structure where they'd found the hidden cellar and the box containing Eleanor's journal and the replica medallion. Thankfully, those items were now hidden inside the house, but the intruder couldn't know that. Approaching cautiously, Rebecca could see light moving inside the barn, a flashlight beam sweeping systematically across the interior. She raised her phone to call the sheriff when a second beam of light appeared, coming from another direction. A second intruder was methodically searching the area around the clay pots they'd excavated earlier. Rebecca retreated to call for help, but as she turned, her foot caught on an exposed root. She stumbled, dropping her flashlight, which hit a rock with a sharp crack. The sound echoed in the night stillness. Both flashlight beams immediately swung in her direction. Rebecca froze, caught in the open with nowhere to hide. One of the intruders called out sharply, and both began moving toward her. Abandoning stealth, Rebecca ran for the house, dialing 911 as she moved. Behind her, she heard the pursuers gaining ground, their footfalls heavy and purposeful. She reached the back porch as the emergency operator answered, gasping out the situation and her address, before rushing inside and locking the door. Lily was at the top of the stairs, face pale with worry. "Mum, get back in your room and lock the door," Rebecca ordered, moving quickly to check that all windows and doors were secure. "There are people outside. I've called the sheriff. A heavy knock at the front door made them both jump. A man's voice called out, "Ms. Mitchell, Security Patrol. We noticed suspicious activity on the property." Rebecca peered through the peephole to see a man in what appeared to be a security uniform, but something felt wrong. The county sheriff's dispatcher had given no indication they already had officers in the area, and the patrol had arrived too quickly after her call. "Please show your identification," she called through the door. There was a pause, then, "Ma'am, we need to check the property. There may be intruders." "The sheriff is already on the way," Rebecca replied. "Please wait for them outside." Another pause, longer this time, then footsteps retreating from the porch. Through the window, Rebecca saw two men conferring near their vehicle. Not a marked security or police car, but a dark sedan with no visible identification. After a brief discussion, they climbed into the car but didn't drive away, instead parking. With a clear view of the farmhouse. 20 minutes later, an authentic sheriff's cruiser arrived, lights flashing. The sedan quickly departed as the deputy approached the house. Rebecca let the officer in and explained the situation, including her suspicions about the security patrol that had arrived suspiciously fast after her 911 call. Deputy Garcia, a middle-aged woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, took her statement seriously. "We don't have private security companies that patrol this far out of town," she confirmed. "Did you get a company name or see any identification?" Rebecca had to admit she hadn't. The deputy checked the property, finding evidence that someone had indeed been in the barn, fresh footprints in the dust and a dropped cigarette butt still warm to the touch. "I'll file a report and increase patrols in this area," Deputy Garcia promised. "But I recommend you consider staying somewhere else for a few days, if possible. Trespassers often return, especially if they're looking for something specific." After the deputy left, Rebecca and Lily sat at the kitchen table, too unsettled to return to sleep. "What do we do now?" Lily asked, hands wrapped around a mug of hot chocolate. Rebecca weighed their options. Leaving the farm meant abandoning their discoveries and possibly allowing Preston's people to search more thoroughly in their absence. Staying meant potential danger if the intruders returned with more determination. "We need to understand what's happening," she finally said, "and that means figuring out what the medallion and those clay pots were actually for. Tomorrow, we're going back to the family cemetery to get a better look at that pattern on Eleanor's grave. And then we're meeting Dr. Chen and her colleague. After that, we can decide whether we need to leave temporarily." As dawn broke over the farm, Rebecca stood on the porch, watching the sunrise illuminate their property. Despite the night's frightening events, she felt an increasing connection to this land and a growing determination to uncover its secrets before Preston could claim them. The medallion, the clay pots, the distinctive pattern on Eleanor's grave, all pieces of a puzzle spanning nearly 250 years. Eleanor had discovered something significant enough that people were still pursuing it centuries later. And whatever it was, it had made the Caldwell farm extraordinarily productive for generations. Rebecca thought about her initial dream for the property, a simple, sustainable life where she and Lily could rebuild after economic setbacks. That vision now seemed both smaller and larger than before. Smaller because the farm's true potential apparently transcended conventional agriculture. Larger because whatever secret lay beneath these acres might have implications far beyond their personal circumstances. Rebecca studied the map. Nothing obvious. It's in a small clearing about a quarter-mile from the house. We haven't explored that area thoroughly yet. If the 4 boundary points create some kind of system, Dr. Patel suggested hesitantly, then this central point might be where they connect or activate. It sounded fantastical, yet the evidence before them, the precisely placed pots, the astronomical alignments, the generations of extraordinary productivity, and the Prestons' determined pursuit, all pointed to something beyond conventional explanation. We need to investigate that central point, Rebecca decided, and we need to do it now, before Preston returns. They gathered necessary supplies, shovels, water bottles, Rebecca's camera, and Dr. Patel's scientific equipment. The replica medallion went into Rebecca's pocket. Though they all understood it wasn't the original, it might still provide guidance for whatever they discovered. As they prepared to leave, Dr. Chen received an alert on her phone. "There's been a development," she said, reading quickly. "A colleague at the university just forwarded a press release. Preston Development announced this morning they're breaking ground next week on a major new research facility focused on revolutionary agricultural technologies. The facility will be located on property adjacent to—" "Let me guess," Rebecca interrupted, "adjacent to the former Caldwell farm." Dr. Chen nodded grimly. "They've apparently owned the surrounding parcels for years, just waiting to acquire this central property." The news added urgency to their mission. Whatever Preston Development planned, it involved their farm as a crucial component, and their timetable was accelerating. The 4 of them set out toward the central point marked on their map, following a faint trail through fields long unplanted. The summer heat pressed down as they walked, cicadas buzzing in the tall grass around them. Rebecca found herself studying the land with new eyes, wondering what secrets it held beneath its seemingly ordinary surface. The clearing, when they reached it, appeared unremarkable, a roughly circular area about 30 feet across where grass grew shorter than in the surrounding fields. No structures were visible, no obvious signs that this spot held special significance. "This is definitely the place indicated on the medallion," Dr. Patel confirmed, checking her calculations against the physical location. Rebecca felt an unexpected sense of disappointment. She'd half expected to find some obvious feature, a stone structure perhaps, or signs of prior excavation. Instead, there was just grass. "Maybe we need to dig," Lily suggested, voicing what they were all thinking. They began carefully excavating the center of the clearing, taking turns with the 2 shovels they'd brought. About 2 feet down, Rebecca's tool struck something solid. Switching to hand trowels, they gradually exposed what appeared to be a stone surface, flat, smooth, and clearly manufactured rather than natural. Further excavation revealed a circular stone approximately 6 feet in diameter. Its surface was intricately carved with the same pattern found on the medallion, but larger and more detailed. At the very center was a small, circular depression that looked exactly the right size, too. "Hold the medallion. It's a keyhole," Lily breathed, staring at the depression. Rebecca removed the replica medallion from her pocket, studying it, and then the carved stone. "If this was designed for the original, I don't know if the replica will work." "There's only one way to find out," Dr. Chen said quietly. The tension was palpable as Rebecca knelt beside the stone and carefully placed the replica medallion into the central depression. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a faint but distinct click, The medallion settled into place, fitting perfectly despite being a reproduction. A low, humming vibration began emanating from the stone, so subtle they felt it more than heard. The carved lines, seemed to shift slightly, though when Rebecca blinked and looked again, they appeared unchanged. "Something's happening," Dr. Patel whispered, her scientific skepticism momentarily suspended by what they were witnessing. The vibration intensified, spreading outward from the stone in concentric waves they could see rippling through the surrounding soil. In the distance, at points corresponding to where they'd found the clay pots, brief flashes of light pulsed in sequence, as though energy was flowing along invisible lines connecting the boundary markers to this central stone. "It's activating," Rebecca realized. "The whole system, whatever it is coming back online." The vibration continued to intensify, the humming becoming audible now, a resonant tone that seemed to harmonize with the natural sounds around them. The ground beneath their feet warmed perceptibly, and the air above the stone began to shimmer, like heat rising from sun-baked asphalt. "Remarkable," Dr. Chen whispered, her scientific training momentarily overwhelmed by the inexplicable phenomenon unfolding before them. "The energy pattern appears to be following the exact configuration marked on the medallion." From their vantage point in the clearing, they could see the pulses of light at the boundary points growing stronger, more sustained. Each clay pot location now emitted a steady glow that connected to the central stone in straight lines of energy, creating a geometric pattern across the farm, a perfect match to the design on the medallion. "It's some kind of network," Dr. Patel suggested, her voice hushed with awe. "The boundary points are channeling energy to this central node." Rebecca felt a strange tingling sensation as she stood near the stone, like static electricity raising. The hair on her arms, the replica medallion, had begun to spin slowly in its depression, rotating counterclockwise, though no visible mechanism moved it. "Look!" Lily pointed to the surrounding field, where an extraordinary transformation was occurring. The overgrown grass was changing color, shifting from the dull yellow-brown of summer neglect to a vibrant green that spread outward from the central stone in a perfect circle. Where this verdant wave passed, withered plants stood upright again, rejuvenated as though months of growth had occurred in seconds. The phenomenon continued to expand, accelerating as it reached the boundaries marked by the clay pots. Within minutes, the entire visible property had transformed from an abandoned, drought-stressed farm to a lush landscape of almost unnatural vitality. "It's not just affecting the grass," Rebecca observed, pointing to a nearby apple tree that had been barely clinging to life. Before their eyes, new leaves unfurled from its branches, followed improbably by blossoms that opened and transformed into small fruits that swelled visibly. Dr. Chen had recovered enough from her initial shock to begin documenting everything with her phone. This defies all known principles of plant biology. The energy catalyst must be affecting cellular growth at an unprecedented rate. A vehicle engine roared in the distance, interrupting their wonder. Through the trees, Rebecca caught glimpses of multiple vehicles approaching fast along their driveway. "Preston," she said grimly. "He must have been monitoring the property somehow." "What do we do?" Lily asked, looking anxiously between the approaching vehicles and the still activating stone. Rebecca made a split-second decision. "We need to remove the medallion. If this is what Preston's been after all along, we can't let him get control of it." She knelt beside the stone, reaching for the replica medallion that continued its slow rotation. As her fingers touched its surface, a jolt of energy passed through her body, not painful but intense, like plunging into cold water. Images flashed through her mind in rapid succession. Eleanor Caldwell placing clay pots in freshly dug holes, generations of Caldwells standing where she now knelt, and most surprisingly, glimpses of people who preceded the Caldwells, indigenous peoples, and before them others whose appearance and clothing were unlike any historical cultures she recognized. The vision ended as abruptly as it began. Rebecca grasped the medallion firmly and lifted it from its depression. The humming immediately began to subside. Though the landscape changes remained, the farm stayed vibrantly rejuvenated. "What happened?" Dr. Chen asked, seeing Rebecca's stunned expression. "I saw history," Rebecca managed, tucking the medallion securely in her pocket. "This system predates the Caldwells by centuries, maybe millennia. They discovered it, learned to use it, became its caretakers." The vehicles were visible now. Preston's SUV leading a small convoy that included a large truck with scientific equipment visible in its open bed. They had perhaps 2 minutes before confrontation became inevitable. "We need to fill in this excavation," Rebecca decided. "Hide what we found." They worked frantically, shoveling dirt back over the stone. They had barely finished concealing the most obvious evidence when Preston's vehicles pulled up at the edge of the clearing. Blake Preston emerged first, followed by men in security uniforms and others in lab coats who began unloading equipment. Preston surveyed the clearing with narrowed eyes, immediately noting the dramatic transformation of the surrounding landscape. When his gaze fell on Rebecca and her companions, his expression hardened. "Miss Mitchell," he called, striding forward, "I see you've been busy." He gestured to the rejuvenated fields, and apparently quite successful, activating the system without. "Proper understanding is extremely reckless." "I don't know what you're talking about," Rebecca replied evenly, though the medallion seemed to grow warmer in her pocket. Preston's laugh was cold. "Please, my family has studied these sites for generations. We know exactly what's beneath this soil and what the medallion does when placed in its receptacle." His gaze flicked to the freshly disturbed earth at their feet. "You've found the keystone, and judging by the landscape transformation, you've activated it at least temporarily. Your family stole the original medallion from James Caldwell," Rebecca countered. "Along with similar artifacts from other properties your company mysteriously acquired after their productivity declined." "Acquired, not stolen," Preston corrected smoothly. "The artifacts needed proper study, proper application. The families who happened upon them were using them inefficiently, treating them as little more than farming tools. While your family recognized their true potential," Dr. Chen interjected, "beyond agriculture." Preston nodded, seeming pleased by her understanding. "Precisely. What you've witnessed today is merely the most basic function of the system, accelerated botanical growth. But the network is capable of far more when properly configured and connected to other similar sites." "Other sites?" Rebecca repeated. "How many are there?" 12 that we've confirmed across North America," Preston replied, his professional mask slipping to reveal genuine excitement. "Each contains a keystone and boundary nodes, similar to what you've discovered here. When synchronized, they create a continental-scale energy network unlike anything in recorded history." "For what purpose?" Dr. Patel asked, scientific curiosity. Momentarily overriding her wariness, Preston's expression turned calculating. "That's what our research facility will determine. The potential applications are endless. Clean energy generation, climate modification, perhaps even more transformative capabilities. He turned back to Rebecca. Which is why I need this. Property, Ms. Mitchell, it's not just land. It's a crucial node in a system that could revolutionize human civilization. The grand claim hung in the air between them. Rebecca glanced at the rejuvenated landscape, the impossible vitality surrounding them, and acknowledged that Preston's claims, however grandiose, couldn't be dismissed entirely. "If what you're saying is true," she said carefully, "then this technology shouldn't belong to a private corporation. It should be studied openly, its benefits shared globally." Preston's smile turned condescending. "A lovely sentiment, but my family has invested generations in locating and understanding these sites. We've earned the right to control their development." His tone hardened. "Now, I believe you have something that belongs to us, the medallion you used to activate the keystone." Rebecca felt the weight of the replica in her pocket. Preston, apparently, didn't know it wasn't the original, the one his family had stolen decades ago. That misconception might be their only advantage. "Actually," she replied, "I think you have something that belongs to the Caldwell family. The original medallion your father stole from James Caldwell in 1975. Preston's expression flickered with surprise before settling into cold calculation. "Allegations without proof are meaningless, Ms. Mitchell. What matters is that we control 11 fully operational nodes, and this property contains the 12th. One way or another, we will complete the network." He signaled to his security team, who began spreading out around the clearing. The scientists continued unpacking equipment, some kind of scanning technology from the look of it. "Since you've activated the system," Preston continued, "we no longer need your permission to study it. The energy signature is detectable from adjacent properties we already own." He gestured to the scanning equipment. "We'll map the entire network from our side of the property line. Less convenient than direct access, but still effective." A sheriff's vehicle appeared on the access road, lights flashing, Deputy Garcia finally responding to Rebecca's earlier call. Preston noticed it too, his expression tightening with annoyance. "This doesn't end here," he said quietly to Rebecca. "My offer expires today. After that, other methods will be employed." With a final warning look, he returned to his team immediately, adopting a cooperative demeanor as Deputy Garcia approached. While Preston explained their presence as an agricultural survey team working from adjacent property, Rebecca gathered her companions. "We need to secure the medallion," she whispered, "and figure out what to do about the activated system. I have colleagues at the university's Environmental Science Department," Dr. Chen offered. "If this technology is as significant as it appears, they could help document and potentially protect it from private exploitation. And I know people at the Indigenous Cultural Heritage Office," Dr. Patel added. "If this system predates colonial settlement, tribal authorities should be involved in any research or application." The deputy finished speaking with Preston and approached Rebecca's group. "Everything all right here, Miss Mitchell? This is quite a crowd for a farm visit." Rebecca explained the situation in general terms, Preston's pressure to sell, the trespassing incidents, and his current survey from the property line. The deputy seemed skeptical of Preston's explanation, but acknowledged he wasn't currently breaking any laws by conducting scans from land his company owned. "I'll file another report," Deputy Garcia promised, and request increased patrols, but without evidence of direct threats or trespassing, there's a limit to what we can do. After the deputy departed, Preston and his team remained at the property, equipment humming as they conducted their scans. Rebecca led her group back toward the farmhouse, minds reeling from all they'd discovered. "What do we do now?" Lily asked once they were out of earshot. Rebecca felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. She had purchased this property seeking a fresh start, a simple life connected to the land. Instead, she'd become the unexpected guardian of what might be the most significant archaeological and scientific discovery of the century. "We protect it," she said firmly. "Whatever this system is, it was meant to nurture and sustain the land, not to be exploited for profit or power." The Caldwells understood that. They were stewards, not owners. She thought of Eleanor Caldwell, who had discovered the medallion nearly 250 years ago and recognized its importance enough to document it carefully. Of James Caldwell, who created a replica when the original was stolen, ensuring the knowledge wouldn't be completely lost. Of all the generations between who had maintained the system while respecting its purpose. "Preston has the original medallion and 11 other sites," Dr. Chen pointed out. "Even with the replica, can we really stop whatever he's planning?" Rebecca's hand closed around the medallion in her pocket. "We have what he doesn't, Eleanor's journal, the knowledge of how the Caldwells worked with the system rather than exploiting it, and most importantly, direct access to this node. If Preston wants to activate the full network, he needs this property." Her mind was already racing ahead, contacting state historical preservation offices to have the farm designated a protected site, reaching out to universities for independent research support, even exploring whether the Caldwell family might have living descendants who could strengthen their claim to protect the property's legacy. As they reached the farmhouse, Rebecca paused to look back at the transformed landscape. The vibrant green fields, the rejuvenated trees, the sense of life and vitality that now emanated from land that had been neglected for decades. It was extraordinary, but it was also right, as though the farm had returned to its natural state after a long illness. "This is just the beginning," she told Lily, putting an arm around her daughter's shoulders. "Preston said these sites form a continental network. If that's true, what we've discovered could change our understanding of American history and possibly our future." The challenge ahead was daunting, but Rebecca felt a sense of purpose stronger than anything she'd experienced before. She hadn't just purchased a farm at auction. She'd unknowingly accepted stewardship of something ancient and powerful, something that connected her to generations past and generations yet to come. What began as a desperate bid for a fresh start had become something far more significant, a discovery that might rewrite American history and reshape humanity's relationship with the earth itself. Incredible stories like Rebecca Mitchell's discovery happen all around us, often hidden in plain sight. The mysteries of our past continue to emerge in the most unexpected places, challenging our understanding of history and technology. Who knows what ancient wonders might be waiting beneath the soil of ordinary farms, forgotten buildings, or even your own backyard? If you've enjoyed this extraordinary journey of discovery, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming explorations into history's greatest mysteries. Share this video with friends and family who appreciate the thrill of uncovering the past. And let us know in the comments what historical mystery you'd like us to investigate next. Remember, the greatest treasures aren't always gold or jewels. Sometimes they're knowledge and technologies from our ancestors that can change how we see our world today. Subscribe now for more amazing stories that will transform your understanding of history.